What's up guys, welcome back to the channel for another figure showcase. As a massive fan of Dune and Dune 2, I wanted to make a video showcasing the amazing production quality of the InArt and AugToys 1/6 scale Paul Atreides figures, as well as spend some time indulging in the mastery of the filmmaking and storytelling in these films. So if you're a fan of Dune, I hope you enjoyed this showcase, as I have attempted to capture the quality of the figures and recreate some memories from the films. But before we get started, if you do like my content, do me a favor, hit that like button, notification bell, and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get to it.
What if I'm not Dad? Not what? The future of House Atreides. I told my father I didn't want this either. I wanted to be a pilot. You never told me that. Your grandfather said, a great man doesn't seek to lead. He's called to it. And he answers. And if your answer is no, you'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be. My son. I found my own way to it. Maybe you'll find yours.
At the beginning of the story, Paul seems unsure of his destiny, and I love how after he shares this, his father responds the way he does to his confession. What a great father-son moment. I love it. So, to kick it off, we have the AugToys Paul Atreides figure that I have modded to use the InArt rooted hair sculpt with instead. When I saw that AugToys had made this look from the film, I knew I wanted to get it to represent the first half of Paul's journey in Dune. I love that they took the time to build the world and allow us to learn the ways of Arrakis along with Paul. To get this head to fit properly, you need to shave down the neck adapter on the AugToys body here by chipping away at the top of it to get the InArt sculpt to sit better. To secure it even more, I have also glued a magnet to the neck adapter to work with the one in the InArt sculpt. A massive shout out here to Bob Dylan for this, as he's the first person to share this mod on his Facebook page. You are the man, brother. This figure here as a whole, even with the original sculpt by AugToys, I do believe is a worthy collectible and addition to my Dune collection. Barring some annoying body issues like the boots always popping off or the torso being a bit too long, I like this look and I want it represented on the shelf. It comes with a ton of accessories as well, including this black jacket and military uniform hat here. For this next pose, I have Paul with his hands appearing to be in the pockets of the jacket, and I tried playing around with having the lamplight accessory in there, as I do like that they included this with the figure. It's something you can put in the display, behind or beside him, and for photography, it was fun bringing it in to create the illusion it's hovering like it did in the film. Then lastly, we have Paul holding a book about Arrakis, which is a great addition to include with this figure, I think. It's set open and has details about the Fremen suits depicted on the 2 pages. Now, whilst it's not a figure I'd be trying to do dynamic poses with, I like having a look to represent Paul before his life takes a drastic turn. With this sculpt on, I really love this piece. Also, a shout out to Time Walker Toys for hooking me up with this figure as well. Really appreciate that, guys. Moving on to the InArt Paul Atreides figure, I'm starting by capturing moments that either emulate or replicate scenes from the films. This is an amazing piece and feels so well made that in this showcase I really just want to try and experiment with eye-catching or emotion-inducing poses and display options, I guess, while trying to tell a story using lighting and photography. For this scene, I have Paul standing somewhere up high, looking out into the desert preparing to go south. I wanted to experiment with the lighting as I've just gotten a small rig 10-watt max torch that I'm using here to create maybe a sun off into the distance. I experimented with it being smaller and larger, with the large being my preferred, I think. I really went for a darker scene overall too here, and I feel that with the rock base, which is the one that comes with the quarter scale Iron Man Mark 6, it works better for selling the mood and the display. Paul places the thumper in the sand and waits for Shai Hulud. My idea for this one was to play around with some of the apps in Canva to help create a scene. I went and got some kinetic sand because on the shelf in my collection I'll be using it to bulk up the dune display. I'm using that for Paul to interact with here, which is the mound you see him standing on, and I used the background change app in Canva to add the sky, and then the PS Express app on my phone to change the color tone. This isn't a display option to me, it's just one I wanted to play around with for photography and to learn how to create a full scene using real and Photoshop elements. Shai Hulud approaches. The build-up of this scene in the film is so well done. The way they pace it, the cinematography, the sound, it's about 8 minutes in total and it's just a masterclass in film for me. What a moment, especially in the cinema. For this scene, this was a pose I settled on after a few different attempts. This was my first attempt, to have him standing with the hooks out waiting. For this one, I have the hood on. The cape is flowing to the left side and he's just standing straight on. The overall pose I didn't stick with though, because this way makes him look a bit stiff, I think. But I did like playing around with posing the hood and getting a closer look at him here with all this headgear on. I do like the hood option. For my second attempt, I made quite a lot of changes. I took the hoods off and I changed the direction of the flowing cape. I completely articulated his body to create curves and give him a direction and intention, finished up and then sold by the angles in which you view the figure and the pose from. Now, whilst I like this pose with him looking out and up, I knew I still needed to keep tweaking to try and get something different. Which led to attempt number 3, the final choice for this pose. Having the cape down behind him and having him look off to the right instead changes the vibe of the scene for me. So then I finally decided to incorporate the kinetic sand, the thumper, and the 2 desert mice to create what I think could be a display option on the shelf for this version of the figure. In fact, as I have 2 of this guy, this will most likely be the display choice I go with for 1 copy, and I'm thinking I'm probably going to do it in a DTOF type of shelf, that way I can contain the sand. We move on to when Paul was riding Shai Hulud using the grappling hooks, and for this shot I wasn't quite sure how to try and get anything close to representing that moment in the film. The hooks only shoot out a tiny amount and I don't have a sandworm for him to ride. In the end, I chose to put him on the sand mound to stand in for the back of Shai Hulud in an athletic stance to replicate that moment with his arms out holding onto the perceived hooks locked into the sandworm. Then I decided to experiment and see if I could get a shot where I can use After Effects with practical effects to emulate that moment in the film. Trying to recreate it using the figure and Photoshop with only the knowledge and skills I currently have is something I wanted to try. My goal was to create a shot immersed in the chaos with the sand and dust going everywhere, because it was a very chaotic scene. The sand walk. Okay, so next I wanted to experiment with some different walking poses with Paul to see what I could come up with. First attempt, I'm using the kinetic sand and I have Paul walking off into the desert. I used the figure's boots to put the footprints in the sand, and I chose this viewpoint to be back behind Paul, watching him walk off, so I could highlight the sand walk and the trail he leaves behind him. You can also see the different edits blending in as I speak, and that's just different layers of effects I played around with while trying to create this scene for my photography. Doing this part is actually one of my favorite things to play around with. For this next one, I decided to play around with the viewpoint more on this pose, and I went down even lower to try and make it look like he's walking up a sand dune now. Then I thought, why not play around with Canva again and see what we could do. This here is using the Replace the Background app, where you type in prompts of what you want the new background to be, and to my surprise, it even filled in over the sand I had him standing on, which I thought was pretty crazy. Now, I think this blended pretty well. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. For this next scene, I wanted to try and capture Paul from front on walking up a dune, using his hood to keep the bright sun off his face. So I decided to play around with light coming in to represent the bright sun beating down on Paul, and I focused on trying to capture that by positioning the lights in my room to hit the figure in a way it shows he is shielding his face with his hood. Now, while I came up with this pose just for photography, this is actually a display option I would consider leaving him in on the shelf, to be fair. And I do like how I hit his face here with the bright light I had on him. I'm pretty happy with that one. Okay, so moving on to the next walking pose. It's more of a stalking, walking quietly with his crisp knife out as if he's sneaking up on someone type of pose. To my surprise, he is balancing on his own here too. He actually has great balance as a figure, and I attribute that to him having a nice weight and not being too light. For a pose like this, it's really all about the angle you view it from, and for me, I think this is the best viewpoint as you get the curves and the perception of movement, bringing life to the figure and intention to the pose. I love all the details in this figure's design, and I really enjoyed appreciating the craftsmanship and posing options with this release. Now, for walking pose attempt number 4, and probably my favourite of the bunch. I got this one to the point I'd be happy to leave him in long term on the shelf. I'm using this base that he comes with, and the magnets here are actually helping him stay balanced, even with only 1 foot flat on the ground, to my surprise. I'm going for him walking right toward us and about to step off the base. He's holding the crisp knife in his right hand and clenching his left into a fist. I'm portraying the wind catching his robe and blowing it back to convey movement, and I've posed his legs and twisted his torso to try and sell the illusion of him in mid-step walking. Lastly, to add intention, I've posed his eyes and head position to show he's walking to us with a purpose. Next, I thought I'd take a look at him without the robe on and just do some simple poses to see what I could come up with as an option for display on the shelf, as I do like to change up my poses every now and then. It's fun to see what you can come up with, and it keeps the collection fresh. This one is super simple, just standing, holding the crisp knife as if he's just unsheathed it, and I've thrown in both the mice down on the base to accompany him. This is something I could see myself displaying him like for a while. Next, I thought, let's take a look at some more of his accessories, so I grabbed the gun he comes with. Now, if you're using this base, you're probably not going to be doing crazy dynamic poses with this figure because of the magnet system, so I thought, what type of standing poses can I do? This one is pretty standard, just holding the gun, but for me, the challenge of trying to make a pose like this work and be unique, it's all in the tiny details, like stance. Can I get him looking natural, like a real person? Can I bring it to life and make it look like a shot of the character? Then lastly, what angle and viewpoint can I get to sell the moment? Now we have Paul aiming the gun. It's a few slight tweaks different from the last pose, as I went from that to this. It's another simple display option that doesn't risk any damage with the suit if you're worried about that. But for me, he didn't really use the gun in the film, so I'm not as tied to it, him using it over other accessories that he comes with. But I did think to myself, let's play around with posing the eyes as well to try and make him look in the direction of the gun. And while I'm not connected to the gun as much, I do like the look with the masked head sculpt on like this.
This is my father's ducal signet. I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis! Eruditina Heshidani, Nelisan al-Gaim, Ruin di Menaruk, Ashini! Listen al-Gaim!
Paul Muad'Dib Atreides. I had to add that moment. Lani and I loved that speech in the film. That performance by Charlemagne was fantastic, and combine that with the mastery of everything the team did to build that world, this is why this figure is such a home run for me. This is my second copy of Paul and the one that will stay this way posed up in the display, pristine. I gotta say, this figure may be one of the best figures I've ever owned and posed up. Now, it's not perfect. There are limitations due to the suit, like the midsection hardly budging and it being tight in the legs, but I do not care about any of that. With this head sculpt and the rooted hair, it just feels and looks so realistic. I really did have fun trying to film this and see how I could pose it, light it, and experiment with bringing it to life through photography. Here he is as well with his eyes made blue. I did this in PS Express, the app on my phone.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
May Thy Knife Chip and Shatter Part 1. So I've gone back to my other Paul figure and put the other rooted head sculpt on this guy to try to recreate some moments from the movie that can also be really nice display choices on the shelf for Paul, I think. Here we have the beginning of the movie does before he fights, which is part of an ancient salute that Duncan Idaho shows him earlier. I could definitely be happy displaying him like this on the shelf for sure. May Thy Knife Chip and Shatter Part 2. Next we have the second part of the salute where Paul touches the blade to his forehead, and I think this is the more iconic look more so than the last pose. For this one, I decided to play around with the small rig torch for the background to bounce some light off the wall again, as I am enjoying experimenting with different lighting styles and choices. I feel like the warm light goes well combined with the vibe and the feel for this character. The pose I think can be a set and forget type of pose and display too, for sure. It feels iconic to me. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. May Thy Knife Chip and Shatter Part 3. Lastly, we have the final pose and moment I tried to capture with this InArt Paul Atreides. The moment right before battle when they square up to each other. That shot from the film is magnificent with that lighting. I hope InArt one day soon makes a fade router so we can replicate this scene. In regards to the pose in hindsight, I could have done better getting him looking more natural. I think I have the torso too stiff and his legs aren't spread out enough from side on. It was a fun one to try though, and I'd probably only do it for the display if they release fade. And that's it guys and girls. I hope you've enjoyed this pose session and maybe got some inspiration for your own displays. I thank you all for tuning in, and if you haven't already done so, do us a favor would ya? Hit that like button, notification bell and subscribe to the channel. But for now, until next time, I'm out.